And we're back, guys. So now what we're going to be doing is we're going to move further along with some more advanced acrobatics, if you will. So we're playing around a little bit with some, let's call it basic stuff. It might not always be basic for some, but we're going to be trying to do more challenging things. So what do we mean by challenge? Well, essentially we're going to try to put our arms, our rib cage, our hips into these more difficult positions. Now, if you're already someone that's very mobile, that has mobility in their joints, good control upside down and things like that, this is going to seem a little bit easy. But for those that are starting off and that haven't been doing a lot of training for a while, we might have a bit of stiffness in the joints. So the idea of this session is not to work on an acrobatic, but it's the second progression session. So we're taking progression 1, the acrobatics that we saw previously, and we're adding a little bit more mobility, stability work before we move on to the next video, before we move on to the next exercises. All right, so let's look here at one of our first exercises that we're going to be doing. We could do this with a dowel, or we could do it with nothing at all as well. We're going to go in what we call what's commonly known as the child's pose. So nice little stretch here for the lats. And I like to use either a band or a dowel in this case. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to curl up here. So by doing this, I'm getting an extra stretch in my lats, so my back muscles here, just like that. I can get even further stretch if I have something elevated like a box or a bench, and I can go a little bit deeper into the stretch under my armpit. So the idea is the same as preparation 1. Preparation 1 is essentially to give you mobility in the thoracic, in the shoulders, and the hips, to make you very strong, very mobile for all these acrobatics. Well, this scheme here is the same thing. We're just progressing a little bit more, so we're adding more difficulty to these strategies here. In the same position here, my child pose, I'm going to try to turn my palm towards the ceiling without bending the elbow and really work hard on elevating my arm. So the other arm that's on the ground, I'm pushing really strong against the ground, and then I can alternate. Just like that. So again, focusing deeply here on that shoulder mobility, especially with the locked elbows, because a lot of the acrobatics, as we saw, are locked elbows. All right, this other one here, it's a little bit funky. We're not going to be looking the coolest perhaps in the gym, but essentially we're going to try to disassociate our vertebrae. So what I mean by that is we don't want the rib cage and the lumbar to be stuck in one box and stopping ourselves from moving. So we're going to do what's commonly known as the spinal wave. So it's a little bit funky here, but I love to do it. We go cervical in front, and then we go thoracic in front, and then lumbar and the hips. So we just move back and forth like this, opening the chest, closing the chest. Like I said, this looks really, really cool in the gym. And we just do this, making sure that we're breathing. Now, really important never to do this under load. So the spine is not meant to move with load, or a lot of load, I should say. So we always want to stabilize it when we're doing our athletics. But here we want to create some kind of disassociation so that when we're starting to do our movements, especially the bridging on the ground, we have that capability. We have the motor control to do that. And the spinal wave helps to kind of disassociate that. All right, the next one here that we're going to be doing is a squat on the ground, but we're going to try to reach deeper. So a deep squat, and this is not easy for a lot of people. What I'm going to do to help me is I'm going to squat deep and then roll back and then come back into my deep squat. The idea here is to work the hip flexion, knee flexion as well, but also dorsiflexion of my ankles. So making sure that I can get that deep position in my ankles. And what I mean by that is I want to work my heels on the ground. So if I'm capable of getting that deep position, then that's good. And I simply let myself rock back and back here I push myself up. Go deep to where I can't go anymore, rock back. Just like that here. So this will help, especially with our ankle, those that are very limited in our ankle mobility, to slowly progress into that deep squat. The deep squat is going to be important, not so much when we're finishing the acrobatics, but when we're going to be learning things like the macaco and the auge French. Most times we're going to land into a deep squat. Now that's not the intended ideal finishing position, but when you're learning, that's how you get the first steps into it. And if you're not able to go into that position and rock accordingly, then you can hurt your ankles, you can hurt your knees. So it's good to progress with something smoother like we just did. The two other ones here, so we've already worked the straddle in the first progression here, and the idea of this next one is to simply try to reach even further. So what we can do is we can start on one leg and with our hands essentially creep in a semicircle pattern a little bit further in front as we go forward. Very important to activate your quadricep muscles, so your leg muscles, to externally rotate or just to stiffen, if you will, so that the pelvic bone anteriorly rotates. So it just tips in front versus getting a curved back like this. We want as much as we can, if we're working on this, deep breathing and reaching forward every little step that we take with our hands. Last one here, we're going to work on a standing pike, walking the legs, just trying to reach here. Again, I want to concentrate on my hips. I want to contract my hips or my quadriceps here so that I can reach a little bit further here. Now, you're going to go where you're going to go. Try to avoid curving your back. Yes, it is going to curve. It's not going to be super straight like this. But again, it's that pelvic tilt, anterior tilt that we want with the contraction of our quadricep muscles and trying to hold the position. Same as progression one, work these exercises for about 20 to 30 seconds when you first do them. Then when you get more comfortable, add a minute or up to a minute and up to no more than 2 minutes. So 2 minutes would be a good length of time to control these movements and to really go into deeper positions such as the last ones. All right, so I hope these little exercises help you guys get some ideas of how to prepare for your acrobatics, how to make sure that we're going to avoid injuries. Work them slowly into your warm-up, cool-down, things like that at home when you have the time, and also sprinkle in some of those acrobatics that you want to work. Next video, we're going to do some more acrobatics. See you soon.